Hi, my name is Jennifer Howard. I am the owner of Facets Relational Care, and today I'm going to be doing a video on the levels of health for Enneagram Type 2. Like I did with Enneagram Type 1, we're just going to start at the bottom and work our way up. And then I have a little list of examples that I have created for the different types, and I'll throw those in as we go. And I'm hoping that that will help make the different levels of health for this number easier to identify for you as we go. So starting at the bottom, at the most unhealthy level, which is a level 9 for an Enneagram Type 2, we're talking about somebody that can completely let go of the things that they need to do to take care of themselves and throw the weight of their own self-care onto other people. They almost make it sound sometimes, and depending on the two, they can do this very directly or very indirectly. They make it sound like it's your job to take care of them. There's almost like a sense of entitlement there. They can just kind of excuse and rationalize their refusal to take care of themselves and the demands that they make for attention or whatever it is that they feel like they need to have in return. I had a cousin who, she's a 2 on the Enneagram, and she went through an incredibly hard phase in her life when I saw her sink into a hardcore level 9 for a Type 2. And it was one of the hardest things to watch. It was even harder to put up with. She had an experience where she got pregnant in high school, and then the guy that, I mean, when you get pregnant in high school, the chances of you still even knowing the guy who's the father of your child a year from them, I mean, that's just unlikely. And that was the case for her. And so there's a lot of pain and hurt revolving around the fact that she's had this child, and this guy that fathered the child didn't want to be present for that, which is completely understandable. So she went through this period where it lasted for a long time. She graduated high school and she stayed at home and lived off of her parents' money. She became a really demanding person, and some of the behaviors and the attitudes that we saw come out of her were really, really ugly and even abusive. She would expect her parents to give her money whenever she wanted to go shopping. She wouldn't take a job, wouldn't hold down a job, didn't want to go to college. She would expect that if she wanted to have like the living room all to herself to watch something on TV, she would expect that somebody would take her baby from her child, and leave so that she could have that room to herself. Or if she wanted the house to herself, she would expect somebody to be available to take the child and leave so that she could do what she wanted. And if you didn't give that to her, she would become violent. I had seen her pick objects up from around the house and throw them at people, and it was a really abusive atmosphere for a very long time. I remember there was a time that I had come to stay to babysit her baby for her, and she had this was right before she graduated, so she was at school, and I'm 4 years older than her, I think, maybe just 3. And anyway, so I was already in college, so I could stay and take care of the baby for her. And I remember she came home from school, she walks in the door, she goes to her room, changes clothes or does whatever she's going to do, and gets ready to turn around and go right back out. And I said, well, where are you going? I have to leave. You're home now. And she said, oh, well, I'm going to go do such and such with my friends. And I said, no, you didn't tell me that you were going to do that. I have a class that I have to go to. I need to leave. You need to stay here and take care of your child. She got so angry at me. She was livid. I don't remember what happened. I don't remember if she ended up staying or if she ended up leaving. I stayed for a little while longer, but I don't remember why now. But it turned out that her dad had to come and smooth everything over, and he couldn't calm her down. So he came to me and said, look, can you just leave her alone and give her what she wants so that she'll stop acting like this, and we don't have to put up with it. And I said, no, I can't, because that's enabling the behavior. And anyways, that's just somewhat of a picture of what like a level 9 person could look like. And there's a little bit of some like level 8 and level 7 stuff in there as well, because when you're talking about an unhealthy 2, and we're talking about the movement between levels 7, 8, and 9, we're talking in essence about a person that has come to feel so resentful of the fact that they have given so much and have not received what they wanted in return for that, that they begin to force their needs on other people. They will make you feel guilty for not giving them what they want. They become abusive. They blame you for their problems. I mean, this is just a classic martyr syndrome, classic, playing the victim kind of a thing that type 2 will do when they get into this unhealthy level 7, 8, 9. 9 is just like where my cousin was, just this complete refusal. I'm not going to get a job. I shouldn't have to. I'm just going to stay home. I'm really depressed. I'm going to let you guys take care of me because you should, because terrible things have happened to me and I deserve it, and that kind of a thing, if that makes sense. Lots of anger there too. Um, Level 8, we have a more domineering, and Rizzo and Hudson, if you use the Enneagram Institute, which is where I've taken my notes from, they're the ones, by the way, that created the levels of health for the different Enneagram numbers. So this is solely something that comes straight from them. It's not something that was originally passed down with the Enneagram as an oral tradition. So I take this information from Rizzo and Hudson, just so you know where it comes from, and then I'm giving you the examples that I have to tie in. But when we get to a level 8, type 2, we have someone that's very domineering, very coercive. I could use my sister as an example for this one. She's a 2 as well. And my sister and I know that I've given you guys pieces of the type of home that we grew up in, but we grew up in a home with a father who was a very extremely unhealthy type 4, very abusive, a mother who was a great mother. She wasn't a bad mother, but because my dad refused to work, my mother had to work, and we were at home under the care of my father almost all of the time, with no one to kind of supervise his treatment of us, or you know what I mean. So my sister and I were victims of a lot of things that we shouldn't have been, and so it's understandable to me why she grew up feeling so angry, and why, I don't know, there's so much hostility there. And she's doing a lot better now than she was, but she had just gone through this time. And again, like with my cousin, it was so hard to watch, and it was hard to be around. It's hard to relate to somebody that's acting this way, where she was very domineering, very coercive. She was just flat out demanding. Whereas my cousin would kind of be, she was almost more like Eeyore. She was kind of like, well, woe is me. Everyone should give me this because terrible things have happened to me. My sister was, there was none of this melancholy stuff. I mean, it was just flat out, the very pushy, very demanding, you're going to give me what I want when I want it or else kind of a thing. There was, I remember this happening. It was a few years ago. My sister and I had both moved out, and when we were growing up, my parents had bought us all of these different gaming systems. We had like the PlayStation, the Xbox, all of this different stuff that we had as we were growing up. And my sister, when she had enough money where she went and bought the newer versions of these things, and she wanted to, so that she could have some for herself. And so she moved out and just bought her own. And so the ones that my parents had bought us before we moved out were still at the house. They didn't play them. So I thought, well, I've moved out, I'd like to have them. So I go back to get them, and I'll never forget, my parents wanted me to ask my sister's permission to take them. And I thought, I mean, I guess I could kind of see why that makes sense, because technically they were given to both of us to use. So, I mean, I can see why that would make sense. But at the same time, she's already repurchased these consoles and has them at the apartment that she lives in right now for herself. So I don't understand why she would care if I took these. Anyways, I said, okay, I'll do whatever. So she had come by, and I asked her there if it was okay if I took those, since she already had, she'd rebought all of them, repurchased those all for herself. She had all that stuff. And I will never forget it. I mean, it was like being sideswiped by a train. She lost it. She was enraged. She was screaming and cussing and at the top of her lungs. And she was saying something about how I always get everything that I want, and everybody takes everything from her and gives it to me, and nobody really cares about her. And she started saying like I was a selfish asshole, and why don't I just take it, because all I ever do is take stuff from her anyway, and she never gets anything. She was like right here in my face, like just inches from my face. Like her spit was hitting me in the face. She had her finger like this in my face. You know what I mean? And I mean, it was scaring me because I thought she was about to hit me or something. And she just went on this tirade. And then she goes into a room, slams the door, barricades it with a piece of furniture, refuses to open the door for anybody. And my parents are like, well, let's just wait till she calms down. And anyways, the aftermath of that isn't important, but I'm giving that as an example to you of what maybe like a level 8 type 2 would look like, because that was very, very level 8. I don't know, it could be kind of a level 7 thing too. There's some movement right there. Level 7 can be very manipulating as well. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily as large of an expression of the anger as there would be maybe at level 8, but there's definitely going to be uh, some emotional manipulation, some making you feel guilty because they didn't get what they thought that you should give back to them. You know what I mean? That operating out of resentment. So this is the sort of stuff that happens when we're in an unhealthy level type 2, right? 7, 8, 9. I I actually probably I have a good example for level 7. I have an aunt who is also a 2, and she's for the majority of my life as I've known her, she's been fairly unhealthy as well. Not level 9. I've seen her at level 8 sometimes. For the most part, I think that she tends to hover pretty steadily at level 7, maybe level 6, but a good example, I'll use her as a level 7, is she'll do this thing where we go over to her house for a holiday or something. And this happened one time and it kind of frustrated me. She's an extroverted type. She's a 2. She is very much into the whole, let's have one big happy family. Let's do stuff together, that kind of a thing. And I'll never forget, we went over for like the 4th of July or something one year. I don't remember, but the house that she lives in, there's this giant, she lives out in the country. So there's this huge giant deck that wraps around the front porch and then the same in the back. And anyways, half the family had gone out on the back deck and then the other half had gone out on the front deck. And I guess after a couple of hours, she noticed that the whole family wasn't in the same place. Like we all should be together because that in her mind is just what you were supposed to do. So she was getting a little frustrated and she had had a little bit to drink. And so she had come around to the front porch where I was with my husband and then a couple of other people. And she didn't necessarily lose her temper, but she came out and you could tell she was a little drunk and she made a statement like really exasperated. You could tell that. And she said, "Guys, everyone is on the back porch and they're going to think that you're being antisocial if you're out here on the front porch. And I worked really hard to plan this whole thing all week and I made all of that food in there and I spent the money to buy all of the food in there and I'm putting you up in my house and I'm letting you drink my alcohol. And so I would appreciate it if you could just go around to the back and let's all just pretend to be a big happy family because that's what would make me happy. And I don't think that's too much to ask considering what I have done for you. Okay? So I expect to see you back there in 5 minutes. Put your cigarettes out and come over here." She had said that and then she kind of turned around and huffed away and went back through the house and onto the back porch where she was. And so that's just an example. It's that manipulative kind of coercive thing, not really as angry, but definitely kind of trying to work that guilt trip in there. You know what I mean? I've done all of this, therefore you owe me X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. So a level 6 type 2, we're going up into the average levels. This is someone that's kind of got a little bit of a puffed up ego. They are starting to fear that well, they're not starting. If you're at level 6, you're probably pretty consciously aware at this point that you are feeling undervalued, underappreciated, and it's probably been a while. You've been giving yourself to an organization or a person or something that really matters to you and you haven't gotten a return on that investment. And so you've been carrying that for a little while. And so you're here at a level 6 and you're kind of puffing up your sense of importance because you're not getting that ego stimulation that you thought you were going to get from that person or that organization. So you start giving it to yourself. This is where you start to see some exaggerated behaviors in an effort to gain attention. I know a woman, I'm not related to her, but she's a 2 on the Enneagram. And there was a time when she had this job where the way that she told it to me made it sound like a terrible place to work. But again, she was probably about a level 6 type 2. So I don't know how much of this was accurate and how much was just her perception. But she would tell me stories about the guy that she worked for and all of the stuff that she would do for him and the extra hours that she would stay and how he never said thank you. She never got a raise or a bonus, and he would continually pile more on her plate, and she felt like she was really taken advantage of. And she had gone through this period where this guy in this job was just so stuck in her craw that every time we were together, she would spend hours talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. about this guy and how much she hated him and how important she was and how he has no idea where he would be without her, and she ought to just leave him and let him see where he's going to be without her, and that'll teach him, and this kind of a thing. And so that's kind of some level 6 behavior, just getting stuck in this mindset of, I do all of this for you and you don't appreciate me, which is really sad because you would be up shit creek without me. It's that kind of a thing. Again, keep in mind level 6 is where we're going to see type 2 engage in behaviors to get extra attention because they don't believe that they're getting attention from the things that they're doing for you. I could use my sister as another example. She went through a period where it was like every time that we talked to her, she had been diagnosed with a new disease. And it got to the point where it was just ridiculous. It was stuff that, I mean, there was at one time, I forget how old she was. She was young, early 20s. So she's 21, maybe 22. I think she was 21. It doesn't matter. Early 20s. And she comes in and says that she's been diagnosed with glaucoma. Now, I don't know if you know what glaucoma is. I don't understand in depth what glaucoma is, but from what I have been told, I went to an eye doctor and I said, well, my sister had been diagnosed with glaucoma. And he kind of chuckled to himself and he said, well, how old's your sister? And I said, 21 or however old she was. And he said, she doesn't have glaucoma. And I said, how do you know? And he said, glaucoma is a degenerative eye disease that you find in like the elderly, 60s, 70s, 80s. It occurs later in life. She doesn't have glaucoma. But there was a time where she was swearing up and down that she had glaucoma. She's had something about, like, there was one time where she had like melanoma skin cancer, and then that was the thing that we all had to hear about. And then one day she came home and said she had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I don't know if you know what RA is. So rheumatoid arthritis, I know a little bit more about this. It is a type of arthritis that will like cripple the joints. I knew a lady that had RA, and it's another degenerative type of illness. You get it usually much later in life. It's not found in people in their 20s, not typically anyway, but it will cause your hands to like permanently contort and you can't straighten them back up. So it's like your hands get stuck like this, I don't know if you can get it in other places in the body. I would imagine that you can, but the lady that I knew that had it, she was an older woman. She could have been my grandmother, and she had it in her hands, and her hands were like permanently stuck like this. Like she couldn't straighten her fingers. So that's RA. But anyway, so she had come home and said that she had RA one time. She wasn't even 25 when she's coming home with all these diseases that she has. And anyways, that's another example, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful towards her or anything. I'm just using that as an example for what like a level 6 type 2 would be. So we go to level 5, and a level 5 type 2, we're still in the average range. This is where, that anxiety is starting to ramp up a little bit, and they're not feeling as emotionally close or intimate with the people that they love as they were hoping that they would feel at this point. So type 2 starts to be a little intrusive, a little bossy, a little nosy, almost a little too eager to help, a little too eager to give, if that makes sense. And it can kind of be overwhelming if you really just need your space, especially. I'm not going to say I dated a guy because we didn't technically date, but I had a guy that I had been set up with on a blind date many, many, many years ago. This is when I first started college. I think I was 18. And he was a 2 on the Enneagram. He was a level 5 2. And we went on one blind date. I knew almost immediately at the start of the date that this guy was just not the one for me. I was just immediately like, yeah, no, I mean, he wasn't a bad guy. I could just tell that he just wasn't going to be the one. We could be friends, but nothing more. And I explicitly told him that, and I thought that he was under that impression. And I came to find out later that he, in fact, felt very attracted to me and thought that if he just gave me enough, and if he helped me enough, and if he just forced his love on me enough, that it would change me and make me love him back. And it was the start of probably, I'd say, maybe a 2 to 3 year relationship of me trying to, I couldn't get rid of this guy. It got to the point where I felt so bad. I had to be mean. I remember the last time I talked to him, it was my 20th birthday. So it was 2 years. It was my 20th birthday. He called me to wish me a happy birthday and to tell me that he had went and spent X amount of money and bought me some really nice present. He wanted to meet me somewhere so he could give it to me. And I had to tell this guy, you drive me crazy. I want nothing to do with you. You smother me. I hate you. Go away. I never want to see you again. I mean, it had been 2 years of trying to get this guy to stop calling me. I had done everything except change my number. And anyways, so that was the end of that. And I had never heard from him again after that. So I think he finally got the point. But he was a really good example of like a level 5 type 2 because he got to be so clingy. And it was like the more I tried to separate myself from him, it was like the more money he would spend on me and the more he would call me. And he would write me poems and send me these handwritten poems in the mail. And it was just too much for me because I had absolutely no interest in receiving that type of affection for him. And so it ended up driving me away. But that's an example of like a level 5 too. You know, definitely some obsessive behavior there in an effort to, again, satisfy, if you will, that anxiety that, oh my goodness, I'm not wanted, I'm not loved. I'll just make myself more valuable. Do you know what I mean? So then we go up to a level 4, and this is where you have just your basic kind of general people pleasing type 2. I think that when you read most type 2 descriptions on I think that when you read most type 2 descriptions on the internet, they're based off of a level 4 type 2. This is your everyday kind of average 2, if you will, even though I don't necessarily like that language, but we're talking about someone that's kind of, you know, that they want to be liked and they want you to love them and they want you to want them around. And so they've kind of built this idea up in their head that if they just make themselves useful and they're nice and they give you things and they make themselves indispensable, that you're going to want them around. You know what I mean? They can be super, super friendly. They're really nice, even if they don't necessarily feel like being that way. They spend lots of time on flattery, not necessarily in an overwhelming way, but you kind of sense maybe a degree, just a slight degree of inauthenticity there. I knew a girl who was a 2. I used to work with her, and it was like every time she saw me, she had to compliment me on something. And I thought that was weird because most people won't compliment you every time that they see you. And she was never like overwhelming about it, and she didn't draw a lot of attention to it. I just thought it was strange. You know, we'd see each other 5 days a week, and she'd pass me in the hallway every morning, and she'd say, "Hey, Jen, how are you? Did you do something different with your hair today? It looks nice." And I'd say, "No, it's the same as it's always been, you know, every day for the past X amount of months, maybe just a little longer because it grows." "Oh, maybe that's it. You look good with hair that length. You should leave it like that." And then the next day I'd come and she'd say, "Hey, what's that smell? Is that you? Is that a new perfume? You smell great. You should wear whatever you're wearing." And I would say, "I'm not wearing any perfume. I mean, I showered this morning, so it's probably my soap. That's a great soap. You should keep wearing that soap." You know what I mean? The next day she'd stop and ask me how I was, how are things at work, and I'd say, "Oh, this and this is happening," and she'd say, "You know, don't even worry about that. I can tell you're a really smart woman just by what we talk about when we pass in the hall. I bet you're going to do just fine." And it was stuff like that. It was like, I appreciate that she was trying to be nice, but you could tell there was just some inauthenticity there. It's almost like she felt so insecure, she had to compliment me to make sure that I was going to like her. You know what I mean? And it was really obvious. It was really sad too. But anyways, that's kind of a level 4 thing. You can see that with them sometimes. And then we get up to the healthy levels, level 3, level 2, level 1. Unfortunately, as with type 1, it's much harder, I think, to find really good examples of healthier types. I do have a friend who, again, 2 on the Enneagram. He's probably going to be up here somewhere, level 1, level 2, level 3. I'm figuring probably more of a level 3, but this is the sort of person that has discovered that their self-worth doesn't necessarily come from what other people think of them. Their worth doesn't come from whether or not other people need them or whether other people want them in their lives. And that's a key thing for type 2, because when that belief really, really sets in, you can bring yourself to this place where you're capable of caring for yourself and doing things for you and putting up the appropriate boundaries. And you're not going to worry about, well, if someone doesn't like this, then I'm going to lose this relationship. And there are some instances where you're going to lose that relationship. I talk a lot about this. I did a video last year, way back, introduction to type 2. The quality on that is terrible because I had like the worst webcam on the face of the entire planet. But if you get the chance to go back and watch it, and if you can stand sitting through the poor quality, I would recommend that you do, because one of the key things that I hone in on in that video are what boundaries, or sometimes lack thereof, can look like for Enneagram type 2, because that's a big, big issue for your guys. It's a big deal when you're a 2 and you learn how to put really strong and healthy boundaries down. You know what I mean? and not fear that you're going to lose a relationship, or even if you know that you will, or you fear that you might, you're able to lay those boundaries and do something for you without cowering to that fear. You know what I mean? It's like you can stand in the face of that and say, well, this person may reject me. I may not have this relationship after this. They may get angry. They may try to retaliate. They may try to put pressure on me to be the person that the person that I used to be for them, where I would do whatever they wanted me to do. But you get to where you can stand in the face of that and be who you need to be regardless of that. And so we see a lot of that at a healthy level, type 2. Type 2 at a level 3, according to Rhizome Hudson, again, if you're looking at their schematic that they have, you can pick it up they have it in The Wisdom of the Enneagram, which is a fantastic textbook. It's really simple if you want to look at it really quickly, enneagraminstitute.com. It's right there. It's the exact same stuff in the book. It's just you can access it faster and for free. So definitely check that out if you like it. This is where we have an encouraging and an appreciative type 2. This is a type 2 that is aware that other people do give back to them sometimes. It's almost like they've got the blinders off of their eyes and they're able to become aware of how much energy they're exporting and how much is being imported back into them. And they appreciate what's done for them when it's done. They don't go into this martyrdom type thinking of, oh, I do everything and no one gives back to me. They understand that people do for them as well. Sometimes people don't give the same way that you give, and sometimes not to the same degree, and sometimes not with the same intensity. But it doesn't mean that they don't give. Some people give, they just give differently. You know what I mean? My husband and I are a really good example of this. Neither one of us are a 2 on the Enneagram, but I think that this example captures the idea of learning how to appreciate the way that someone gives. My husband and I have used that tool, the 5 love languages, a lot, and it kind of explains, I think, a lot of the issues that we'll have in our marriage, because we took the test and like literally we got the complete reversed answers. Like my number 1 was his weakest and vice versa. And so in essence, if you don't know anything about the 5 love languages, what that means is that the thing that I consider to be love is the thing that my husband absolutely hates. He hates doing it. He hates doing it. And he's really bad at it when he tries. And likewise, the thing that my husband considers to be a sign of love is something that I hate doing. I absolutely hate it. And I'm really bad at it when I try. And so my husband and I, one of the greatest challenges in our marriage has been in learning to appreciate the way that we express love. I have had to get to a place where I can say, my husband does not express love to me in a way that I would naturally prefer. But the things that he does do for me, that is his way of saying, I love you. So it's not that he doesn't love me. It's that he just speaks an entirely different love language than I speak. And I had to learn how to appreciate his love language for what it is and stop demanding that he give me what I give to him. Do you know what I mean? And so when we talk about 2s that are at healthy levels, okay, especially like a level 3, for example, this is a 2 that has gotten to that place where they can say, maybe they're not giving back to me in the same way that I gave to them, but people love me and they do give to me. And I know that I'm wanted and I'm appreciated for who I am. You know what I mean? And there's not that feeling of resentment there. When you get to a level 2, type 2, we're talking about an individual that is free from, I would say, even necessarily having to assess whether or not they are getting anything back. They can take more of their energy and focus it altruistically on helping other people, loving other people. Again, with solid boundaries in place, they're capable of saying, I've given all that I really want to give right here. So I think now I'm going to go and do something for me and let these people take care of themselves. This is also, I've noticed, a very forgiving 2. So even if 2s get into a relationship and they find that they have been taken advantage of or they have been underappreciated, this is a type 2 that is willing to forgive, let go. You know what I mean? They're not going to hold it against you. And they may continue to do things for you, or they may not. It's like they kind of have that realization that they get that choice, which again, it's differentiation and it's having a healthy boundary. Lastly, type 2 at level 1, which is the healthiest level that you can be. This is what we call the altruistic 2. And that's a debatable thing depending on which psychologist you ask. Altruism may or may not be a real thing. Most of these psychologists that I have heard from about this issue would argue that altruism isn't even a real thing. It's not possible to be an altruistic person. But altruism is the idea that we have in mind when we're talking about a level 1 type 2. So this is someone that truly, truly from their heart gives because it is a joy to give, not because they want to get something back. This is someone that's probably done a lot of inner work and, self-exploration, however they do that, where they have decided to explore and kind of heal whatever wounds that may have been in there, adjust some expectations that may have been off, and they're able now to go and give to the world, and they can say, if I get something back, that's great. If I don't, it's okay, because I'm giving because there's joy in giving. You know what I mean? This is someone that gives as God would have them give. That's something that Suzanne Stabile, she teaches the Enneagram. She said that once before, and I completely agree with that. When a 2 gets to a place where they give what God would have them give and not necessarily out of a manipulative place to meet their own ego need, this is when we have an altruistic or a level 1, 2. So anyways, those are the levels of 2 from level 9 all the way up to level 1. And you guys, the drill: questions, comments, whatever, thoughts. I always love to hear from you guys. Put them down there. And yeah, thanks.